Mic check, 1, 2. Mic check.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Today I want to speak about our plans going forward and what the next phases to our state's transition will look like when our current public health orders expire. We have now had 483 lab-confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 in the state, with an additional 152 probable cases. There were 4 new cases reported today. Yesterday, we had a particularly high number of new cases, 27. 24 of those were in Fremont County, which continues to be an area of concern. As most of you are aware, Fremont County has the highest number of confirmed cases and the highest rate of positive cases in the state. The number of reported hospitalizations remains stable at 9 today. I'm also happy to report that the statewide supply of PPE has improved considerably over the past 2 weeks, and the counties are now well supplied. And I want to thank the Department of Homeland Security Director Budd and Deputy Director Leland Christensen, as well as the county folks that have worked very hard on this. Our statewide COVID-19 dashboard shows that we are stabilizing in 5 of 6 metrics, which are the category of new cases continuing to be concerning, and for the reasons that I just mentioned. As of this afternoon, 13 counties have received countywide variances to the current public health orders. These variances have been approved by Dr. Harris based on the metrics and health data of individual counties, and you can see them there. These variances vary from county to county, but have allowed these counties to resume holding their typical indoor church services, to offer outdoor dining, and in some cases, indoor dining. And I want to thank those counties for their cooperation and the way they've worked to make sure that we're getting back in the saddle, so to speak, and doing that well. As I have stated previously, I'm a strong believer in local control, and the approval of these county-level variances reflect the differences in the presence of the virus in different counties around the state. Tomorrow, I will let my 14-day quarantine directive for those coming from out of state to expire. So if you're coming from out of state, there's no longer a need to quarantine, self-quarantine for 14 days. And while that permits out-of-state travel to resume, we are also asking people to do that judiciously. If you are traveling to a location where COVID-19 is more widespread, then you are risking exposure. Those who are regularly in contact with vulnerable populations, let me say that again, those who are regularly in contact with vulnerable populations should be particularly vigilant. The Wyoming Game and Fish Department will resume the sale of daily fishing licenses on May 9th. The Game and Fish Department will be recommending an emergency regulation to extend the spring turkey season to May 31st, which is 11 days longer than it would have been. So again, out-of-state 1-day and 5-day licenses will go back on sale, and we're extending our spring turkey season. Our current public health orders will expire on May 15th, and today I want to announce what the next phase of our transition will look like. When the orders expire, we will seek to further ease restrictions that remain in place. That means that we will relax restrictions on personal services, businesses, hair salons, tattoo shops, and cosmetology businesses. Importantly, we anticipate that bars and restaurants will be able to reopen to indoor table service. These reopenings will come with the same restrictions outlined in the variances we granted to several counties this week. And these include limiting tables to 6 persons or fewer, with 6 feet of separation between tables. Staff will be required to wear face coverings. Social distancing will be required in waiting areas and serviceways, as well as increased sanitation measures. We are moving as quickly as we can, and I really want to thank you for your forbearance and your patience as we go about this. As I said 2 weeks ago, we do not want to surrender the ground we have gained. We will be relying on our restaurant and bar owners to implement these measures, and I am confident that they will respond. After all, this is the business we all want to see up and running and continuing to run. No business wants to be a source of a major outbreak of COVID-19. We will also look at whether it is appropriate to modify statewide Order Number 2 to allow for larger gatherings. This would allow churches around the state to resume in-person services and movie theaters to resume operations again with social distancing and sanitation measures in place to protect public health and limit potential spread of the virus. The Department of Health and the Department of Family Services are currently reviewing child care center operations, and we will have an update on possible changes to those early next week. These planned openings are contingent upon what we see in statewide data. And as I have said before, I want to continue to make this point. In order for us to implement these orders and to expand them, we need the cooperation of the people in Wyoming. We must continue to be vigilant, and we must realize this is not a simple return to the old way of doing business before this pandemic began. This is the way we reawaken our economy and we move forward. I want to return to the subject of state parks briefly. And I recognize that there has been some concern about the shift to a reservations requirement for camping. I've heard about that. But I want to explain this is being done so that we can reopen camping more quickly and make it safer for our Wyoming citizens by facilitating social distancing and preventing access by out-of-state campers. We are also canceling all existing out-of-state reservations for the 2020 season. State parks will assess and reevaluate the reservation system at the end of this camping season to determine the future of the program. Let me say, as an aside, that we've also been working with the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management and the Park Service on reopening those facilities before the end of the month, and we'll keep you posted. You will still have the ability to go camping at the last minute at our state campgrounds and reserve an available spot when you go to the park. You can also reserve any available campsite on your way there before you leave. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Harris for a few minutes so she can speak about where the status of COVID-19 in Wyoming is, the prevalence of the virus, and how we're going to continue to monitor the situation as we enter this new phase. Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Governor Gordon. I would like to acknowledge that I realize between all of the various news reports from around the world, changing situations closer to home, and all of the new rules and recommendations that it can get difficult for all of us. In Wyoming, we do have some clear areas of concern, and we'll continue to monitor the disease situation. We continue to see new cases concentrated in some counties and also new cases scattered among others. We have some community spread, but it is not, thankfully, as widespread as in other areas of the country. Those types of frightening situations are what we are working to prevent. Here are some of what we're trying to do. We want to use testing to diagnose as many people with COVID-19 symptoms as possible. Identifying people with COVID-19 helps us put public health measures in place, such as isolation and quarantine. We realize that those can be tough for people, but they're very important. Please don't avoid getting tested out of fear. Knowing what's going on locally helps us control outbreaks and helps prevent spread within communities. That's good for all of us. Testing is more available now than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. We encourage anybody with symptoms that could be COVID-19 to call their healthcare provider about testing. We have powerful tools to prevent spread, but they do rely on people recognizing and reporting when they are sick and seeking care. When people ignore their symptoms, they do risk spreading it to others, including those who might have a very tough time recovering. We are continuing with our thoughtful and measured path forward. But even though we are taking those steps forward toward a new phase, we still have to practice caution, especially those who may be at risk for more severe illness from COVID-19 or who live and work with those who might be at higher risk. The pandemic is unfortunately not over, and we still all need to do what we can to limit the spread of disease. Remember that we have learned that you can expose other people to COVID-19 before that you know that you are sick. If you do have symptoms, you are even more likely to spread the virus to people you come in contact with. The restrictions and recommendations in place are all meant to lessen the chance that any of us can pass along this illness. The updates we made last week with our statewide public health orders and expect to make in the coming week, together with the county variances in many locations, do offer more options and choices for most communities. But it's important for people to understand that we aren't turning back the clock to the way things were before this pandemic began. Within all of the updated public health orders and variances are very important restrictions meant to support the social distancing we continue to believe is essential. Examples include making sure that tables are spaced in restaurants and wearing face coverings in certain public areas. I'm expecting Wyoming's business owners and their customers to take these restrictions seriously. And from what I'm hearing and seeing, I know that most are doing a great job of taking actions to protect their staff and customers. I also want to talk about the differences between restrictions and requirements included in the state and county health orders and the critical recommendations that we're making. Businesses that were closed or very limited in their operations are beginning to have more options, but we still believe working from home when you can is a valuable strategy. We still believe that gathering in large groups carries increased risk of spreading the virus. And we still believe that people who have a higher risk of serious illness and complications from COVID-19 should limit their contact with other people as much as possible. Those are the people that we can't forget moving forward. I know many of them are restless and many are lonely, and I know that that's not fair. But we also know that this disease is taking a heavy toll among those who have certain health conditions and who are older. We do not want some of the larger scale horror stories we have seen happen in other places to find us here in Wyoming. Unfortunately, it could happen. Our more vulnerable citizens and those who care for them must stay the course, as they have been doing. The safe path ahead through this pandemic involves continued thoughtful and measured actions. No one wants to make things worse or go backward because we went forward too quickly. I can't emphasize the importance of face coverings enough to help slow the spread of disease. You could be sick and not know it, and this helps ensure that you aren't passing on the virus to somebody else. I've seen more and more people wearing these, and I think that's a really great sign. All along, we've been trying to find the right balance between those who think we weren't doing enough and those who think that we've done too much. I think for the most part that we've been successful, and that's because of the efforts that you have made. This isn't over, but we haven't been overwhelmed in the ways that many of us have feared. So the last thing I want to say today is thank you to everybody in Wyoming. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. And, you know, I guess in today's news we heard, sadly, that there was a young woman who apparently may have exposed a number of high-risk individuals in Campbell County. And that's the sort of thing that kind of makes us want to pause. It's certainly inadvertent. It was certainly not something anybody hoped for, but it is the kind of condition that can turn into something of grave concern. Luckily, with our tracking and the other abilities to identify quickly, we're able to quarantine and isolate, and we hope to resolve this case very, very quickly and be able to move ahead. But as I say, these are the sorts of things that can happen from inadvertence, from a challenge. And it is interesting. I know there's a lot of concern about rights, and rights also imply responsibilities. And the reason I often wear a mask, especially when I'm outdoors or in public, is because I have the responsibility to protect others' rights to good health, and that mask, being a cloth mask, will provide safety to those around me. But I'd like to finally speak about the special session that we've been talking about for the last several weeks. And it's a special session of the Wyoming Legislature. Article 3, Section 7 of the Wyoming Constitution authorizes me to convene the legislature for a special session in the case of a, quote, grave emergency in the affairs of the state, end quote. That is the position Wyoming, like almost every other state, finds itself in today. At this time, I will sign the proclamation that will officially call for a special session of the legislature next Friday, May 15th. At that special session, we will consider a few pieces of legislation, including the appropriation of federal funds made available to Wyoming through the CARES Act. As I have talked about, the CARES Act has strict restrictions on who can be reimbursed and when the money has to be spent. And I'm very grateful to ask for the assistance of the legislature in this endeavor. We want to provide assistance to businesses and citizens, as I said last week, as quickly as possible. Many of our businesses and citizens have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 emergency. And in typical fashion, not all laws can be written to cover all circumstances. So I'm looking for the help of the legislature to devise programs that can be very responsive to the specific needs of the people of Wyoming and be able to deploy those resources to the people of Wyoming when they're needed, which is right now. So with that, I have this proclamation. And it reads, State of Wyoming Executive Department Governor Proclamation. Whereas COVID-19 was first detected in Wuhan, China in 2019, and since then has spread to over 60 countries, including the United States, there are 479 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Wyoming as of May 6, 2020, as well as the presence of community spread. It is certain that many more cases will be diagnosed. There have been 7 deaths in Wyoming related to COVID-19. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, Governor Mark Gordon declared a state of emergency and public health emergency in the state of Wyoming, stating that on March 11th, 2020, an individual within the state of Wyoming tested presumptive positive for COVID-19 and the state of Wyoming is now experiencing a public health emergency in response to the evolving COVID-19 outbreak. And whereas Article 3, Section 7 of the Wyoming Constitution authorizes the governor of the state of Wyoming to convene the Wyoming legislature in a special session in the case of a grave emergency in the affairs of state. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gordon, governor of the state of Wyoming, by the authority vested in me by the Wyoming Constitution, do by this proclamation call the 65th legislature of the state of Wyoming into a first special session to be conducted electronically with the anchor location at Wyoming State Capitol in Cheyenne, Wyoming, on the 15th day of May 2020 at 8 o'clock a.m. to consider, 1, appropriating the federal funds available from the United States government to assist states, political subdivisions, and impacted businesses and individuals in addressing issues raised by the COVID-19 emergency and issues caused by steps taken to abate this emergency. 2, amending and creating programs to be administered by the state for the purpose of helping businesses and residents impacted by the COVID-19 emergency. 3, providing assistance to certain Wyoming businesses and residents negatively affected by the COVID-19 emergency. And 4, providing state budgetary flexibility, retention, and transfer of funds to prepare state and local governments for the public health emergency and resulting economic devastation. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the executive seal of the state of Wyoming to be affixed this 7th day of March, 2020. And this proclamation is now signed. Lastly, I want to thank you, the business community and the public of Wyoming, as we head into this next phase. I am excited at the news today of the further awakening of our economy and the fact that we are well on our way. And with the good graces of the people of Wyoming, we will make this country great again. We will make our state's economy strong again. It's been a long time, and we have this terrific opportunity. I'm also happy to say that as part of that opportunity, we're working on opening Yellowstone Park in the coming weeks. We're working on opportunities to consider rodeos and ways that we can do those kinds of events as well. So we are tirelessly working every day to get Wyoming back to as close to what we remember as we can. But as Dr. Harris said, it's important that we remember these steps need to be taken and thoughtfully. And it won't be exactly a return to the way it was, but it'll be a return to a new normal that we will all be very thankful to have. This is a challenging journey for us all, and it is through your efforts and the good decisions of Wyoming people that we've relied on every step of the way that we are in a position to resume more of the activities we engaged in prior to the arrival of this virus. What I do ask is that you continue to use good judgment, to enjoy our outdoor spaces, to make sure that you are healthy. And if you feel sick, don't go to work. Don't engage with other people. Make good decisions. By doing so, our economy will continue to rise and reawaken. You will keep others safe. And each of us, I want to stress this again, each of us has the power to impact others. You might not be concerned about what happens to you, but your actions can impact others, as we've seen, unfortunately, inadvertently, through no desire or anything else in Campbell County. With that, I will be glad to take some questions from the media, and as you know,
well, hello? This is Isabella with the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. How are you doing today?
Okay. Isabella, I'm barely hearing you, but that's okay. You're from the Wyoming Tribune, and Michael can translate to me what the question is.
Awesome. So I know that kind of the testing capabilities of the state is kind of, changes based on how much materials we get. I was wondering where we stand right now as a state as far as testing capabilities go as we're opening up and easing restrictions.
Abilities of the state to Dr. Harris.
Sure. The question was, what's the status of the testing capabilities within the state? As you know, the situation has changed quite a bit from the beginning of the pandemic from several points. The first is the capability of our Wyoming Public Health Laboratory to run tests to the point where we're now able to run testing for any symptomatic person in Wyoming, and we're asking providers to send those samples to us. That's both because of the increased staffing we've been able to get, as well as efficiencies in the types of equipment and in the procedures we use to test. And so I'd like to thank the laboratory for all of the great work that they've done. The second part of that is supplies. As you all know, the supplies to actually test people, the media and the swabs, at several points along the way were difficult to achieve. Our laboratory is able to synthesize the media, the viral transport media that's needed to test. And while swabs are still in high demand across the country, we have been getting shipments of those in and distributing those out to the counties. So we're at a point now where I really do encourage people who have compatible symptoms to contact their providers. I know that at the beginning of the outbreak, we did have to message that if you're mildly ill, please stay home because we might not have a test for you. I think that the situation is different now, and we want to test as many people as we can so that we can implement those control measures.
Thank you, Isabella. Next question.
Hi, Governor Gordon. This is Seth of the Star Tribune. Just wanted to talk about priorities heading into the special session. Obviously, hospitals have been battered pretty hard financially as part of their efforts to respond to the pandemic. I wonder if you can talk at all about what you and the legislature might be talking about as far as relief for providers and for hospitals. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Seth, thank you very much. The question was about what am I and the legislature discussing about relief for hospitals, some that are particularly hard hit by this virus. And that is an ongoing discussion, Seth. Over the last couple of weeks, there have been some cash infusions to those hospitals. I'm happy to say that for the most part, hospitals are healthier now than they were in the beginning of April, but that also means part of what we're looking at with these bills from this special session is increased flexibility to be able to deliver resources to those clinics and hospitals that need those resources.
Governor, this is Mark Bentley with 307 Net Radio in Buffalo.
Good to hear from you.
Thank you, Governor. You've been talking about the goal of the legislature to deal with the federal money for businesses and citizens who have been affected by the pandemic. In what way? Helping the businesses how?
Mark, thank you for that question. The question was that I've been talking about helping businesses and individuals, and your question is how would these programs work? Mark, we've talked about over the last couple of weeks the payroll protection program that was designed to get cash out the door, the layoff aversion grants that the Department of Workforce Services has done, and some of the loans that have been designed to sort of keep employees active and working. But as the national government has designed those programs, they've been designed in such a way that they've missed a few people. The gaps are where we're looking to see those sole proprietorships. I know the second round of PPP came back and resolved that, but nonetheless there are still some people who are left on the sidelines by both of the two first grants of PPP. So we've been looking at seeing if we can roll some of those funds to meet those specific needs of employees and employers, making sure they get going. Particularly hard hit are restaurants. That's been an area that we've been really anxious to move forward on. I've heard around the state, an eagerness not only to get up and running, but we also know that we're not going to be running at full capacity for a while. So, can we get those funds available to help support those institutions during this time where we're still scaling back? Thanks, Mark. Next question.
Thank you, Governor.
Hey, Governor, this is Max Cotton with Wyoming News Now. Just curious, two questions. First, one for you, one for Dr. Harris. First for you, despite what happened in Campbell County earlier this week, what makes you feel it's safe to, after next Friday, to reopen the entire state to in-person dining? And then also for Dr. Harris, today she approved Natrona County's variance allowing in-person dining starting tomorrow. What made her feel it was appropriate to go forward with that?
So, Max, thank you. The two questions are really kind of related. The first one is what makes me feel that we can lift the restrictions we have on dining next week, and the second one is more particular to Natrona County. Max, just to be clear, these are Dr. Harris orders. We talk about them on a regular basis, but we knew that we had to start somewhere. We knew that nobody has done this before. We explained, as we did 3 weeks ago now, that we had to have metrics, that the people of Wyoming wanted to understand what was happening, what we were seeing, and explain our actions. And so those are the reasons why we looked at it. We're starting to see these variances come in. We'll have some experience with that. People have, and I will state this from the start, local control is absolutely critical, and that was something I felt was absolutely imperative that we have, number one. And number two, best ideas come from people thinking about how they would open these restaurants and these establishments, and we've had a number of really good ideas that have come up, not just sort of some blanket recommendation from some other state or something else, but people have really thought about this and how it fits in their county in Wyoming. But let me let Dr. Harris answer both of those questions.
Thank you. So in terms of reopening Friday, the metrics we've been discussing for a couple weeks, are what we are going to look at. Certainly reopening some businesses, and again, with strict restrictions to make sure that social distancing is happening as we open those businesses is what we're thinking of, not just sort of reopening everything to normal. But certainly that decision will be based on the data that we're seeing both this week and next week. And if the data don't indicate that that is something that's safe to happen, then we'll of course have to rethink that. But knowing that people are anxious and want to know what's going to happen and what we're planning, we did think it was important to let people know, what we're thinking and what we're planning to do for next week, as long as the data say that that's okay. We've been careful in the variance orders to note and to record the specific types of data that we're looking at to show why some counties are able to take the actions that they've wanted to take. When we signed that order, Natrona County hadn't had a case in 2 weeks. They're continuing to test. They're continuing to monitor people with symptoms compatible for COVID-19 and seeing that number go down. Their hospital capacity is ready for a surge of COVID-19 patients, and they have adequate testing supplies. So those are the types of data that we're looking at for all of the counties, and Natrona County met those.
All right, thanks. Governor and Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Max. Next question.
Hey, Governor Gordon and Dr. Harris, sorry, this is Seth of the Star Tribune again. I know that these are early plans and the data may change things. Can you be a little more specific about what will be eased and to what extent when these orders expire?
I'll let Dr. Harris handle that.
Thanks, Seth. And a lot of the specific provisions that we'll likely be looking at, are what has been done in the county-wide variances. So you can get a sense of what we're thinking of. But restaurants are certainly one business that we'd like to open if possible to indoor and outdoor dining, but with tables spaced so that people can be 6 feet away from each other when they're seated, have people seated so that they aren't congregating at bar areas or other areas in the restaurant. Specific recommendations and requirements for cleaning high-touch surfaces and tables within the restaurants, as well as staff wearing face coverings since they'll likely be in relatively close contact or within 6 feet of customers. Similar for places where people may gather, like churches and movie theaters, separating households by at least 6 feet, and both when they're seated and in waiting areas. Again, specific cleaning and spacing requirements and requirements for screening of employees for symptoms before they work. So those are the types of measures that we're looking at. And again, examples of what the orders will likely look like. Of course, we'll learn as we go. And so if there are other types of provisions we think are necessary or would be helpful, those can be added. But the types of things that the counties have done, do provide a roadmap for what we'll likely do for the state.
For that, just a quick follow-up. I think Governor Gordon also mentioned further easing on barbershops and that sort of class of business. Can you describe at all what that easing will look like?
Sure, and again, depending on what the data show, but we have strict sort of number of people in rooms at this point. I think as we allow more people to gather and make sure that spacing is there no matter how many people are in the room, and make sure that the room capacity itself is enough to hold people while they're doing appropriate spacing, then those types of requirements are what we might be able to lift. So specific numbers of people in a room.
And Seth, thank you for that question, because I want to thank the various industry groups that have been helpful in sort of putting recommendations together that we've been able to evaluate. It's so important when we think about reviving parts of our economy, like tourism. Right? Tourism is going to be one of those areas that has been heavily impacted, and if we screw this up, people who might be thinking about coming to Wyoming are suddenly going to go, well, I'm not going to go there because they have a hot spot or whatever happens there. So I just know the people of Wyoming are going to do the right thing. And I'm very confident that our tourism season will come back. People will be cautious about it, but it's exciting to think that Wyoming will be really one of the first to be able to sort of revive that industry as well. And in that respect, I guess I'm really looking forward to being able to open, with the federal government, national parks before Memorial Day and some of the others, if we can keep on track.
Governor Gordon, this is Joanna Love, editor at the Jackson Hole News and Guide. Could you be a little more specific about the national parks plans?
Thank you, Joanna. We've been discussing with the national parks on a regular basis what a plan looks like to open up. Obviously, Joanna, this is one of those issues where we have to work with Idaho, we have to work with Montana, but my biggest concern is our counties, Park and Teton and Fremont, making sure that everyone is comfortable with this. There's an ongoing set of discussions we've had with the county commissioners of each of the parks. We've looked at ways that the park can open sequentially, so that we can get people here and enjoying what Wyoming has to offer. Thanks. Next question.
Governor, this is Barbara Ann from Bighorn County Newspapers.
Hi, Barbara Ann.
Hi, sir. There's been some pushback on the reservation fee for the parks, Wyoming State Parks. Could you explain a little bit what that goes towards?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara Ann. So the question was that there's been some pushback on the park system having a reservation system for when people come. What we are trying to implement is a very good system that's easy to use, that people can sign up and reserve a parking spot, camping spot, before they go to some of our state parks. It allows us to screen out, and I think last week Darren spoke about this, we want to encourage Wyoming people to have the opportunity to enjoy our state parks for camping purposes. We're a little less eager to have out-of-state campers coming in until they've opened up their systems, and so we're working very carefully to get through that. This is a great way to make that experience better for people. It's new, I understand that, but it is it's a great way for us to be able to make sure people don't waste their time getting to a camping spot. And as I say, you know, if you still just want to drive out there, you can still reserve your space when you get there. We're trying to make this as flexible and kind of encourage people to take advantage of what we think is actually going to be a better system, because you'll know the camping space you have and the place you're going, and be assured of that. Thanks. Next question.
Governor Gordon, this is Josh Wolfen from the Campbell Tribune.
Hi, Jacques.
My question is, legislative leadership has informed at least some members of the press that the special session will be closed to reporters who want to cover the proceedings from the Capitol. My question is that the case? And if so, should reporters be kept out of the Capitol for a session of this importance?
Well, the sessions will be open, and at this point, I think there's still some discussion about you know, how they'll actually be conducted. The view, I think, is that they will be open on Zoom electronically, and so I think that's kind of the approach that at least I've spoken with them. It's not intended to have them a closed session, not available to the public, but as I asked in my proclamation, that this session be conducted on a digital platform. So I think there'll be ways for reporters to be able to cover this. I don't believe it's anybody's intent, certainly not mine, and I don't believe the leadership's intent to exclude reporters or the public from being able to participate, but most likely on Zoom or some other function like that. We're learning our way through this. We've now conducted 2 or 3 state loan and investment board meetings, state building commission meetings on these platforms. We're learning our way. It's not ideal, I know, but the faster we get back to sort of a more normal platform, the faster we'll be back in the building, and the better off it'll be. So one more question, or 1 or 2 more questions? Well, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. You know, I guess I leave you with an optimistic view that we've loosened up a lot in the state. We have a number of countywide variances. The Department of Health is working every day trying to catch up with these variances. They're doing an exceptionally good job. We're trying to make sure that we get these in place as quickly as possible. It's a slow start, I know, but it's also a cautious and a good start, because it'll allow us to be able to make the next move with greater confidence, and the next move with greater confidence. You know, I'd love to see us back this summer to a much more normal kind of platform. As I said, you know, it'd be great to have those county fairs. It'd be great to have some of our events, and if we do all the right things and people keep working the same way, we'll get there. We won't go the other way. We'll be able to encourage people. You know, just today I was on the phone with park concessionaire, and they were talking about the world needs more cowboys, and boy, do we need more cowboys. Thanks very much. God bless.
That's when you wish they had the old phone booths like they have in the old Capitol, right? Thank you.